Okay. But Jack has a plan. Go. What do I do? Good job, Ruby. Gosh.
Hello and welcome to this live closing keynote of the AWS Builders Online series. My name is Oliver Klein and I'm the Chief Technologist for AWS here in Asia Pacific. I hope you had a great day so far and learned a little bit on how you can build on top of AWS. Now, part of this live closing keynote here, I want to do what we call a reInvent recap. reInvent is our large annual conference that we do every year within AWS, where we not only take the opportunity to help our customers and potentials out there to build on our platform and learn best practices, but also launch new services and functionalities. And today I want to share with you a little bit of our vision on where we take this with these new services and functionalities and have a subset of these launches that we talk about in more detail. But before getting started here, let's talk a little bit about the regional expansion that we do within AWS. Now, many years ago when we first started AWS, we launched in North America, and you can see, especially here, since we're in Asia Pacific, I'm currently based here in Hong Kong, we continue to invest into new regions out here in Asia Pacific. And over the years, you can see we rolled out further and further into different countries here. And we just also recently announced a variety of new regions that will be up and coming here in Asia Pacific, for example, the UAE, Hyderabad, Auckland, and Melbourne, which also have been announced. Talking about regional expansion, though, and the idea here is to make sure that we provide you with the best experience no matter where your end customers sit. That does not always mean we need a full-fledged AWS region. Sometimes that means having better connectivity or points of presences. Let's zoom into Southeast Asia here for a moment, for example. If you look at Southeast Asia, apart from the full-fledged regions that we have, we also provide you with different points of presences, including, for example, Amazon CloudFront presences, where we launched things in Thailand, in the Philippines, in Malaysia, in Singapore, and Indonesia. And we also continue to invest into giving you capabilities where you say, I want to get access to an AWS region, I want to use your APIs, but some of it I still want to have on my own on-premise data center, but I want to use the AWS capabilities. That's what we provide you with AWS Outposts. I'm going to talk a little bit later about that, and you can continue to see that we make that available in more places, for example, Vietnam or Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, etc. And of course, we also have the AWS local zones, which are basically zones that have a subset of all the services available into certain metro area, for example, in Manila, where we announced the local zone that will be coming this year, and of course the full-fledged regions across. This is just a snapshot into Southeast Asia, but you can see that we continue to invest across Asia Pacific into all of these regions. Now, let's talk a little bit more about running your workloads on the cloud, right? And what does that mean? What is the choices that we want to have? I talk a lot about regions, I talk about services already, but if we talk about workloads, what is the right kind of service to potentially use? How can we create a cloud for all workloads? Because that's really our mission within AWS. And that means we want to provide you with flexibility and choice to most optimally, most sustainably, and most cost-effectively run your workloads on top of AWS. Let's start with the basics. What about processors, CPUs, right? Most workloads require some processing capability that we have available. Now, we provide you with the broadest choice of different processors, no matter if it's an Intel chipset that you want to have or an AMD chipset that you want to have. We were also the first cloud provider to also offer Mac OS X compatible Apple, Intel, and ARM chipsets, and that translates into over 475 different choices of EC2 instance types, as we call it, for virtually every workload out there. It also includes our own specific chipsets, which we call the Graviton, AWS Graviton processors. Graviton processors are chipsets that we design specifically for the AWS cloud that are more energy efficient and more cost efficient than other chipsets, again allowing you to run your workloads more cost effectively and more sustainably. During our reInvent conference last year, we also announced the next iteration of the Graviton processor, the Graviton 3, which is about 25% faster than the existing Graviton 2 processor. So you can see again, we're looking into how can we allow you to run your workloads more cost effectively, but also more sustainably. Because you find that Graviton 3, thanks to the fact that it's an ARM processor, allows you to reduce your carbon footprint. Graviton 3 uses up to 60% less energy than comparable other instance types. Later, I'm going to talk a little bit more about sustainability and our sustainability pillars. So this is a great start into how can we continue to optimize not only the cost, but also reduce the energy consumption of your workloads without, of course, giving up performance, because you always want your application to be scalable and performant for what you're doing. Now, this is a bit on Graviton 3, but we also announced a variety of other instance types. I already mentioned it earlier. We now also provide you with the ARM capability for Mac OS X related instances, the M1 ARM-based, not just the Intel-based instances here. But we also have more specific instance types that we launched for machine learning capabilities. You might have heard of AWS Trainium or AWS Inferentia, which are two custom-built chipsets specifically for AI and machine learning workloads, where we now have these instance types also available. AWS Trainium allowing you to basically train your machine learning model more cost-effectively using this custom fabric. And also AWS Inferentia, as the name implies, allows you to make more cost-effective predictions, inferences of your machine learning model. So you can see we keep investing into the space of different chipsets, different instance types. Again, the idea here is to provide you with options of running your workload most effectively. Talking about that, if we look at the evolution of compute as a whole, traditionally we started many years ago by offering virtual servers, the EC2 instance types, and a lot of our customers still rely on actually launching their virtual servers, their EC2 instances into AWS. But more and more customers are looking into, actually, I don't really want to manage the servers. Can you give me capabilities, for example, for my containers? A lot of our customers are deploying their applications into containers, where we now have the availability of fully managed container management services. You just deploy your container out. You might not even need to care about the underlying servers, virtual servers or EC2 instances. All the way to serverless. You might have heard of the concept of serverless. In 2014, we announced and launched the AWS Lambda service, which at the time was revolutionary and allows you to basically run your piece of code fully managed in a cloud environment. Scales, is securely designed across multiple availability zones for reliability, but most importantly, you only pay for what you use, and that's the serverless concept. Now, that's not only available for compute, but for many other things too, which I'm going to talk a little bit later about. Again, providing with flexibility and choice. Maybe you have specific software that requires to run on specific instances. You can do that all the way to, hey, I'm building code. I just want you to run it AWS, all the way to serverless. So giving you flexibility and choice here again. With that flexibility and choice, though, you might say, okay, well, how do I select the most efficient resources to run my application? Right? Of course, you can go ahead and just launch the largest instance types, and your application will certainly perform, but it's neither cost-effective nor is it energy efficient and sustainable. So one of the things that we have is the AWS Compute Optimizer, and if you scan the little QR code there, you will also be taken to a blog post explaining it in more detail. But it basically looks at your existing footprint that you're running on top of AWS, your EC2 instances, your container services, your Lambda functions, etc., and recommends the most optimal use of these AWS resources, which then, of course, allows you to save cost, and it actually even provides you with an estimated cost savings that you will have. And also during reInvent, we announced new enhanced infrastructure metrics that go into the Computer Optimizer, and also more resource efficiency scoring that we provide you with. So you can score it out. Compute Optimizer, a great way to kind of look at your existing workloads and run them more efficiently. And oops, there we go, my clicker is stuck here for a second. And in addition to that, looking at just optimizing for compute, the other thing which every workload kind of requires is also storage. Right? So apart from having compute, we want to have storage storage components here. Again, we want to provide you with flexibility and choice. Now, what do I mean with that? Well, obviously we have services such as the Amazon Simple Storage Service, or Amazon S3, which is object storage, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But sometimes you also just want to have specific file systems that you currently use with your Windows file system, or your Lustre, or your NetApp on Tab, or your OpenZFS, which allows you to just re-platform into a scalable service to our, either way, our FSX services or our Elastic file systems, all the way to just having like a NAS attached or SAN attached with block storage, which is our EBS services, where we offer you capabilities around speed or throughput optimized, SSD, provisioned IOPS kind of block storage capabilities here. The way it boils down, it's really around, do I want to just re-platform, re-host, or re-architect my application? Right, if I have an existing application and it requires Windows file share, well, in that case, I might want to use FSX for Windows. But if I write a new application, I might want to go more cloud native and re-architect it so that it can use the most efficient object storage through our Amazon S3 platform. Again, we provide you with choices here and flexibility of building your application and choosing the most cost-effective and scalable storage specifically for your workload right here. But let's talk a little bit about this and how we further look into bringing out new functionalities, but more importantly, also making it more cost-effective for our end customer. So, for example, Amazon EBS, which is our Elastic Block Storage, allows you to take snapshots of your file system and store that snapshot. Now, a lot of our customers have said, hey, I actually just snapshot this for compliance reasons. I need to snapshot it and I keep it for 5 years, for 7 years. But actually, I don't really need to access that snapshot unless there's some issue, there's some investigation that I want to pursue. In that case, could you give me a more cost-effective solution here? And that's why during reInvent, we announced Amazon EBS Snapshots Archive, which allows you to reduce your storage cost by up to 75% for less frequently used snapshots. So if you have a scenario where you say, I snapshot it, don't really access it much, AWS Snapshots Archive probably allows you to dramatically reduce your storage costs right here. In addition to that, we want to extend the functionalities that you have. Maybe you have on-premise, you have some tapes lying around where you currently archive your data in. And we already always had the virtual tape gate through our AWS Storage Gateway service, which is a virtual tape library allowing you to load up your tapes, so operate like a tape, but then have actually the data being backed up into your AWS region. Now, a lot of our customers have said, well, that's great, but sometimes I need to move a lot of data over, and I might not have the bandwidth to actually do that via network connectivity. Now, you might have heard of AWS Snowball. AWS Snowball is a physical, ruggedized appliance that we can ship to you, and then you can load up your data, in your office or in your on-premise data center, and then we physically ship it back to our facilities and load it up into your Amazon S3 bucket, for example, which again is sometimes a faster way to move data, especially when we have limited bandwidth. Now, we combined both services together and announced that during reInvent, where the tape gateway can now talk to that physical appliance that we ship over. You offload your tape onto that Snowball appliance and then have it physically shipped back. So if you need to move large amounts of data, especially from tapes, a great way to kind of move this even with reduced or limited bandwidth that you have available. Let's talk a bit about Amazon S3. I said earlier it's a great way to have an object storage, and we have a variety of different storage classes in Amazon S3. Why do we have different storage classes? Well, there are different access patterns that you very often have with data. Some of the data you gotta retrieve immediately and quickly, and you scale it out quickly. Some of the other data you might want to archive. And with the different storage classes, we provide you with options or ways to actually reduce your storage costs if you move it to a more infrequently accessed storage classes or even to archive storage classes. Now, Amazon S3 has a functionality called Glacier, and Glacier traditionally was the way to archive your data, which is a very cost-effective way of storing and archiving your data. But if you want to retrieve it, which we now changed terminology to Glacier Flexible Retrieval, which is the previously retrieval way of how you retrieve from Glacier, meant that it took a little bit of time before you could access your data before it came out of the archive. Now, a lot of our customers have told us, hey, look, I don't really need to retrieve that data often. That's why I want to archive it. But when and if I need to retrieve it, I rather would want to have that data instantly retrievable. And that's why we announced a new storage class called Amazon S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval. So you get the benefits of having an archival storage class here where you very cost effectively can store your data. But if you need to retrieve it, which obviously might not be frequent, but if you need to retrieve it, you want it instantly. And this new storage class will help you to do that. Now, if you say, okay, look, great, you have storage classes, but I don't want to be bothered to kind of set that up. Can you help me and make it easier for me to do that? Well, this is why we also have intelligent tiering. Amazon S3 intelligent tiering looks at the different access patterns of your data and then moves it around these different access tiers, from the very frequent access tier, which is the default S3 standard access, to maybe some more infrequent, all the way to archival, based on the access pattern automatically through the intelligent tiering. And again, you can see we continue to invest into functionalities to make the life of our customers easier and help you, choose the right storage classes, but as an effect also reduce your costs. So cost savings that come automatically with these new functionalities. Now, that was about storage. How about databases, right? Databases also obviously consume storage. So you might have heard about our Amazon DynamoDB service, which is our fully managed NoSQL key value pair kind of database. So it's really great if you need a quick, low latency access of very fast volume, high velocity kind of data. And some of our customers have said, love DynamoDB, but you know what? I actually use it a lot to kind of store data, but I don't often frequently access all of that data back. Could you give me another option to further reduce my cost? And that's exactly what we launched with Amazon DynamoDB Standard Infrequent Access, so IA. So if you have a scenario where you use DynamoDB, but you have data that is less frequently accessed, with infrequent access, we offer you up to 60% of lower storage costs than the normal Amazon DynamoDB functionality here. So again, you can see we continue to invest into helping you to improve your cost and, of course, reduce the use of resources, which also is more sustainable. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So this was a lot about, how do I choose the right kind of compute and storage for my kind of workload? Let's zoom in a little bit further into what other flexibilities we provide you here within AWS. And I very often refer to it as the everywhere cloud. Ideally, we always want to launch all of our application inside an AWS region, but sometimes we need to go a little bit closer to the edge, to the last mile of your end customer. Now again, within AWS, we want to provide you with options here to even go all the way to the edge. Now let's zoom in a little bit into that cloud to edge kind of continuum. What that means is that for most use cases, you probably want to use a full-fledged AWS region that comes with the different availability zones that are available, that allows us to run my application highly reliable and available within an AWS region. But what if I have a scenario where I want to get a little bit closer to the end user? As I mentioned earlier, we have things such as the AWS local zones that we deploy in metro centers, where you have a subset of some of these services more closely available to your end user. But we also provide you with capabilities about having AWS services on premises available. So if you need a scenario where you say, because I need very low latency access, or I have some very specific data residency requirements for this subset of workloads, then you might want to use AWS Outposts, which basically allows you to have the same hardware that AWS is using being shipped to your data center facilities, and you have the same APIs, and you can seamlessly now operate within your AWS region and have subset of your workloads run on premises. We also have the choice of Amazon ECS and EKS Anywhere, which allows you to seamlessly have containers being moved between AWS regions and your on-premise. Talking about that last mile, we also give you options in the 5G space. Specifically on 5G networks with AWS Wavelength, you can actually run your executional code or your pieces of code within the cell tower of our telco partners. In addition to that, we offer you different services around IoT and robotics from AWS IoT Core or Greengrass or FreeRTOS. So if you need to even have capabilities on devices all the way at the edge, lots of services available here for you. And I already mentioned it, obviously also different ruggedized appliances if you need to move things over quickly with AWS Snowball or AWS Snowcone, the smaller kind of version of Snowball here. So again, you can see we provide you with flexibility and options of, say, whenever you even need to run at the edge, we continue to give you options here. Let's zoom in into some of these. First, let's talk a bit about AWS Outpost. Now, we introduced during reInvent last year something new, the AWS Outpost service. Now, Outpost traditionally, and you can see that here on the picture, is kind of that full-fledged sized rack that we basically ship to you, install it, and now you get access to the AWS infrastructure, same services and APIs, but within your own premises whenever your workload requires this. And some of our customers have said, hey, that's really cool, but look, I want to run in an AWS region. I just have this few things in my workload that I want to run on premise, but through the same APIs. I don't need the full rack. And we listened to our customers and said, fair enough, good idea, and that's why we launched the Outpost service, where you have two new form factors here, either way the 2U or the 1U single server that we can ship to you, and you can either way install it yourself on your own premise, or through some of our third-party vendors. So if you have a scenario where you maybe just need one little server in your warehouse, whatever, AWS Outpost service now gives you that capability. In addition to that, a lot of our customers have said, hey, 5G is important. You have this wonderful, fantastic AWS wavelength service that I have available for me, but sometimes I want to have my own private 5G network rather than going to a telco partner. And we said, fair enough, we listened to our customers, and that's why we announced AWS Private 5G, which allows you to set up and scale your own private mobile network within days. How does it work? Well, we provide you fully with the hardware, the software, the SIM cards. We ship it over to you. You turn it on, and it automatically configures, and you got your private 5G network available for you without any per-device charges. Operates obviously in the usual shared spectrum. So if you have a situation, you say, I want my own private 5G network, you now again have the flexibility to do so. And you can see, again, it goes hand in hand with that idea of providing our customers choices and flexibility here. Talking a bit about network connectivity, the other thing that our customers have said is hey, look, you got all these great options around having my private leased lines via AWS Direct Connect to connect into my virtual private cloud, or AWS VPCs. You have options about site-to-site VPNs and SD-WANs, but can you make this a little bit easier for me? And that's why we also announced AWS Cloud WAN, which is a central dashboard for making connections between all your branch offices, your data centers, all the way to the Amazon virtual private cloud in just a few clicks. And apart from that just being a dashboard, it also provides us with options around setting network policies, right? So how does my data flow between all these different endpoints? So if you have a scenario where maybe even you have global deployments with lots of offices and branches and it's all connected, Cloud WAN can now help you to better manage these kind of connectivities. Another thing that you might have heard about being talked a lot about lately is digital twins. What are digital twins? Well, it's basically digital representation of real-world physical objects or systems. Very often useful in the space of smart cities or smart buildings, for example, or smart factories, where we want to have some digital representation of what's happening physically in the world to optimize my operations by creating such a digital twin. And our customers have said, hey, look, can you make that a little bit easier for us? And that's why we announced AWS IoT Twin Maker, which allows you to easily create these digital twins of real-world object systems and then, of course, optimize operations. So, of course, it streams in all the kind of data that you have, sensor data, brings that into that virtual representation, accurately models that out, and even allows you to create immersive 3D views of your digital twin of that real-world object, place, or building. Within that idea also of making things easier for our customers, for the automotive industry, a lot of our customers have said, hey, I have vehicles, they have vehicle data, I want to send that to the cloud environment for better operations, to have a better accurate representation of how my vehicles move around. That's why we also announced AWS IoT Fleetwise, which allows you to easily collect, transform, and then transfer that vehicle data to the cloud at any scale. Right? So all of these services are obviously built with scale in mind, so it automatically scales to any kind of throughput, and of course comes with intelligent data filtering to really make it easy to have any vehicle data being sent back to your cloud environment. And talking a bit about making things easier, The other scenario about connecting to AWS IoT means that if I have an embedded device, I need to have certain libraries or security certificates or security critical code that I need to load up into my embedded device so I can securely connect to my AWS IoT cloud deployment. And we figured again, can we make this a little bit easier for my end customer? And this is why we launched AWS IoT Express Link. IoT Express Link is basically a small little hardware, single hardware component that allows you to have any kind of embedded device and securely connect it to your cloud environment. And we obviously also partner with different hardware vendors out there. So currently available, for example, Infineon, Espressif, and uBlocks that already using the IoT Express Link hardware component. What does it mean? What is that hardware component basically facilitating? Here you can see what it means. It's really about the idea of saying offloading some of these libraries, the security credentials, etc., to have that connectivity, that secure connectivity back to the cloud, instead of loading it into the embedded device that now sits within that separate single hardware component that any kind of manufacturer can now take and use to securely connect to a cloud environment. That means for you as an end customer, you can focus on building your application, your specific embedded device, and offload all the rest to this new single hardware component. Again, making these things much easier to connect securely to the cloud. Now we talked a lot about different options, flexibility, choice, and compute storage, etc. We talked about how that goes all the way to the edge, and how we provide you flexibilities, how to connect it, and even have virtual twins, representations of your physical assets. Now the next thing you're going to say is, well, how do I all manage this, right? And how do I operate all of these services effectively? And as you probably already guessed right, there are many different AWS services available to perform that management and governance and smooth operations that you run on top of AWS. But let's zoom in a little bit further into this. So let's start off basically by an overlook of what kind of management or governance services are available for me. That goes all the way from enabling, provisioning, and operating my kind of environment here, right? Enabling things such as AWS Control Tower, organizations, which allows you to quickly create multiple AWS accounts, structure them for your organization, make sure that it is in a controlled and secured environment, all the way to automatically provision some of these pre-selected, pre-configured environments with CloudFormation. You might have heard of things such as infrastructure as code that's available to you, all the way to operating it. How do I create observability and monitor my environment, right? With things such as AWS Config, I can inventorize my entire environment. Trusted Advisor gives me capabilities of understanding how can I further optimize my environment. All the way to things such as Amazon CloudWatch. Let's take Amazon CloudWatch and zoom in a little bit further into it, because it's a very powerful service, and we continue to invest into new functionalities here to really provide you with full observability of your applications and workloads all across from the lowest common denominator of infrastructure all the way to the end user customer digital experience. Now, if you had a look at CloudWatch already, you might be familiar with the basic alarms and dashboards, maybe some of these metrics or logs that we can ship from your services, like your EC2 instances or your servers or different services that you use, and kind of understand these basic metrics of how it operates. But in addition to that, CloudWatch also over the years has been expanded to look into how do I create observability in the application itself with CloudWatch Service Lens, with things such as X-ray insights, understand how my application is running, where there are maybe performance issues or bottlenecks, all the way to container insights, AWS Lambda insights, logs insights, contributor insights. That really helps me to observe my application-specific data and understand what's going on. And we further bring that to the digital end-user experience. We already had Amazon CloudWatch Synthetics, which allows you to do that, but we also added during reInvent 2 new functionalities, RUM, Real User Monitoring, and Evidently. Let's have a quick look at what those 2 new capabilities can do for you. Evidently here allows me to basically create a variety of different versions of my application. Now, this is very common practice, or good best practice, I should say, as we roll new versions out. Very often this is referred to as canary testing, or maybe A/B testing, or even A/B sampling of your application. So what you do is you have 2 or multiple versions, and you send traffic to different kinds of versions. That might be sent 1% of the traffic to my new version and 99% of the traffic to my old version. Now, how do you actually monitor that rollout? That's what CloudWatch evidently tries to address. As you can see in this example, I could have 2 versions, and I will sample which one is working better. I send 50% traffic. What evidently then does is track these different versions and allows you to get an insight on which version is an improvement to the other version over periods of time. So it's a really great way to kind of understand, okay, which version is performing better. If it's a version rollout, it potentially allows me to say, my new version is ready to roll out. There's better improvement, cool. Continue to send more traffic to the new version, slowly reduce the traffic of the old version. So you can see, again, a nice way to kind of not only have observability into these different versions that you run, but also make smarter decisions and visualize it. Because again, I think you always want to be data-driven in your choices in these specific kind of scenarios. Now, we also bring that all the way back to the end client. That is what we do with real user monitoring. So that new capability of real user monitoring allows you to have a certain JavaScript snippet that you can obviously then run in your platform, on your website, etc. And this reports back certain metrics to Amazon CloudWatch to also provide you observability even at the client-side level. Let's say, for example, within your browser, your mobile device, etc. What it allows you to do is get insights, obviously, what the performance of that is. So very important also to have performance understanding at the last mile, at the client side. And you can see that trickles all the way down to understanding, what's the load time of my page, what takes the longest here to load. So really good to kind of further debug how I further optimize my end user experience here, to understanding maybe, what are the different browsers that are accessing it, what are the bottlenecks, what are the pages that perform slower, etc. So you can see Amazon CloudWatch really provides me with observability across the entire stack, from all the way of my AWS infrastructure, my services that I'm using, all the way to end user clients. Now, another thing that is really important is, what are some of the things that we do to help you protect your application against things such as DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. Now, if you use services such as CloudPhone, etc., you already get access to AWS Shield by default and free of charge, which basically protects you against network distributed denial of service attacks. So anything that's like layer 3, for example, we filter out. You never even feel that there's an attack because it's our mission to kind of protect you from it. But we looked into, can we further help you, especially specifically up at the application layer? You might be using things such as AWS WAF, the web application firewall, and you also want to put in rules that protect your application. And with AWS Shield Advanced, we introduced now an automatic application layer DDoS mitigation. So that's layer 7. Right. How does it work? Well, if you enable it, we basically establish a traffic baseline for each of your protected resources. And if there's any significant deviation of that baseline traffic that we look at, it can be flagged as a DDoS attack and automatically then sets web application firewall routes, WAF, rules in for you so that you can even protect your application layer against these DDoS attacks. Now, the other thing is around AWS Well Architected, which is a fantastic framework and also tool to kind of look into what are some of the best practices to most efficiently run my application. So AWS Well Architected comes with a variety of different pillars. Earlier in the introduction video, you saw the variety of pillars around operational excellence, security, reliability, performance, cost efficiency, etc. And these are some of the best practices on looking at your existing workloads and providing with recommendations on how you can optimize it for some of these best practices, so to speak, be well architected. Now, we added one additional pillar to AWS Well Architected, which is the sustainability pillar. Yes, you guessed that right. That is basically best practices to look into, are you running not only most cost efficient, but most sustainably your cloud workloads on top of AWS. Now, how does that work? Well, it is a bit of a shared responsibility model, as you might have assumed. So that's a little bit similar to what we often have in the security space. We often talk about the shared responsibility model of security. We now have that also for the cloud sustainability. What does that mean? Well, AWS is responsible for sustainability of the cloud. That means, for example, what do we do to use renewable energies? What do we do around cooling? How do we recycle our cooling water, for example? How do we invest into new infrastructure that is more energy efficient? Think about that Graviton tree processor that I talked about earlier. That is ways for us to invest into reducing energy and running the cloud more sustainably, sorry, I should say. Now, on top of that, you run your workloads, of course, and the customer in this scenario is responsible for the sustainability in the cloud. What do I mean with that? Well, it means of how, instead of launching the largest DC2 instance, maybe you can right-size the instances so that you reduce the consumption that overall you run more sustainably. And that is what the sustainability pillar is really all about. We want to give you recommendations of running more sustainably your workloads on top of AWS, where we, of course, have the responsibility to run the cloud sustainably. Now, in addition to that, to also help you with understanding that, not just from that well-architected pillar, but even put numbers on it, because I always like to be data-driven, we also announced the AWS Customer Carbon Footprint Tool. And as the name indicates, it's basically a tool that looks at your overall AWS service usage and then provides you with an output of here's your carbon footprint based on what you're running. So sustainability pillar allows you to have best practices of reducing that carbon footprint and recommendations, and then the tool will help you to understand, okay, what do I actually produce here? Where can I offset some of these carbon emissions potentially? So again, giving a data-driven approach here. Now, this brings us to the next topic around applications themselves and how we can design them with more modern architectures in mind. Very often you heard maybe about cloud-native applications and also modern data strategy. So let's have a look at some of the things that we're doing here and some of the announcements that we had in this space. First, modern applications. So I talked earlier around serverless. Serverless, the ability to basically say, you fully manage everything for me, you run my piece of code, fully managed, scale it out, and I only pay for what I use. And now, obviously, that is at the compute layer done with AWS Fargate or AWS Lambda to build maybe your serverless microservices, but that goes all the way to messaging, event bridges. It goes all the way to storage. Amazon S3 is a serverless storage service, right? You can put in as much data as you want. You only pay for the data that you actually put on top of it, all the way to developer tools, all the way to security and compliance tools. The idea here really is serverless makes it really easy for you to run your workload at any kind of scale, but only pay for what you use. And now you guessed it right, in the analytics space, this is obviously a space where serverless is really handy, right? Because maybe you just run your reports once in a while. And when you run it, you want to get, massive amounts of compute, you quickly run it, but when you're done with running that report, maybe you shut it all off. And so a lot of our customers have already done that through our services. For example, Amazon Redshift, our data warehousing service. And our customers have said, well, I can do that myself, switch it on, run my reports, shut it back down. And obviously, I can automate that. But hey, could you make that a little bit easier for me? And that's why we launched a few more serverless services in this space. So Amazon Redshift, serverless, which allows you to have serverless data warehousing capabilities. Amazon EMR, serverless. So if you run anything in the Hadoop ecosystem, you now have a serverless capability. Amazon MSK, managed streaming Kafka, serverless. Right? So if you have a Kafka, you now have a serverless capability. And Amazon Kinesis on demand, which is a serverless Kinesis stream. So if you have that kind of data stream, you don't need to right-size it anymore, automatically adjust it. With serverless or on demand here, you completely put that responsibility on top of AWS. In addition to that, we obviously also look into how can we help you with further more efficiently run some of your applications. So you might have heard of Amazon RDS, or Relational Database Service, which allows you to run a variety of different database engines like your SQL Server Oracle or MySQL, MariaDB, etc., fully managed on top of AWS. But we looked into, can we help you to further understand how you might have some performance bottlenecks, operational issues within the engine itself. And we wanted to pair that up with machine learning. So Amazon DevOps Guru for RDS is a new capability that automatically detects and diagnoses some of these hard-to-find performance bottlenecks and operational issues, and then, of course, delivers insights and, of course, recommendations to you on resolving these issues within minutes. And by the way, that machine learning model of DevOps Guru is trained based on operating over thousands of databases for Amazon.com. So you get access to these insights through this and can obviously optimize even your database engine here. The other thing is about software development kits. Now, if you're a developer and you want to talk to AWS services, everything is an API. You can make these calls from your programming language, but we obviously want to make that a little bit easier for you rather than writing the raw API codes or calls yourself. We provide you with software development kits, SDKs, and you can see that we continue to expand into different programming languages. So we might have things such as PHP or .NET or Node or C++ or C or Java, etc. And we added 3 new programming languages to this. The first one is Swift, the other one is Kotlin, and also a new SDK for Rust. So if you use any of those 3 programming languages, have a look for these new SDKs. Makes it much easier to directly talk to the AWS services in your programming language of choice. Again, in the gist of keeping with flexibility and choice for our end users. The other thing here for developers is around AWS Amplify. AWS Amplify is basically a set of tools and services that help you get started or quickly build a new applications connected to your AWS environment, get access to things such as authentication and storage and data stores, etc., with a few clicks of a button. Now, AWS Amplify, like I said, comes with some of these libraries that make it really easy to connect your application, new or existing, to AWS services. And by the way, this can be a web application, but it can also be a native mobile application. In addition to that, AWS Amplify already also had the AWS Amplify hosting, so fully managed services to host the backend of your application. And a lot of our customers have said, can you make that a little bit easier for us and even maybe give me a visual tool to do this in addition? And that's why we also launched AWS Amplify Studio, which is a way to visually configure your front and back-end applications through a nice interface within my console and get access to it. Now, how does it look like? It looks like this. Here's a screenshot of the AWS Amplify Studio. So it's really easy to build an application from scratch. You select which kind of framework you want to use, React, Vue.js, Angular, maybe some React Native if you want to build a native mobile application. And then on the left-hand side, you can see that it gives you access to all these capabilities around storage and authentication, etc. So if you have the scenario where you want to quickly build a new application from scratch, you now have this capability with AWS Amplify Studio to even have a visual interface to do that quickly. Again, making things or your life a little bit easier, especially as a developer. Now, lastly, I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and machine learning and how you can actually augment your capabilities of your platform using these new technologies. Now, AWS mission here is really how can we use AI and machine learning and put it into the hands of any developer out there, any builder out there, so that we democratize these capabilities for anyone out there. Now, let's first start a little bit with the vision here and look at overall what kind of services we provide you here in the artificial intelligence and machine learning space. So if you look at the overall AWS machine learning stack here, it's kind of 3 layers. The fully managed AI services, the more custom machine learning services, and of course the machine learning frameworks and infrastructure. Let's start off with the AI services. This gives you access and capabilities to fully managed AI services without the need to have any machine learning expertise, without the need to write any code. You just get access to, for example, natural language processing, things such as computer vision, things such as recommendation or personalization engines, things such as forecasting engines, things such as fraud detection algorithms, right? You just basically include these AI services into your application and off you go. Machine learning services, and specifically Amazon SageMaker, allows you to build more custom machine learning models, again, sometimes with fully inbuilt machine learning algorithms that we provide you with, all the way to writing your complete own algorithm. And then, of course, we continue to invest into the underlying infrastructure. I talked about how can we reduce the cost of training and inference with custom chipsets, for example, but also by supporting any kind of framework out there that you want to use. But let's stick a little bit with machine learning and Amazon SageMaker, which is the middle layer here for a moment. If you look at the different personas that we address this for, well, it's really across everything, right? So if you're a data scientist, you can use Amazon SageMaker to quickly take the inbuilt algorithms, build your custom models, have the different SageMaker Studio and notebooks available for you to quickly experiment with data, run experiments and labs, and build your machine learning models. If you then are ready to run them, maybe you're a machine learning engineer, ops engineer, an ML ops engineer, right? SageMaker, again, can really help you to have a scalable endpoint for your machine learning model and understand how it performs over time. What is new now, what we added to it, is really the role of what if I'm a business analyst? I don't really write machine learning code, or I don't want to write machine learning code, right? I just want to get started on data sets that are available. Can you give me a visual tool to just build a machine learning model for me? And that's what we have now when we launched Amazon SageMaker Canvas. What is Amazon SageMaker Canvas? Well, it allows you to browse your existing data points, import them, join that data together, and then say, I want to define a target of what I want to make a prediction of. SageMaker Canvas then goes ahead and prepares and analyzes that data and quickly and effectively builds a machine learning model so that you can start making predictions. So this allows you to build a machine learning model completely through a console, through a visual interface, without the need to write any code or have any machine learning expertise. How does it look? Here you can see a few screenshots from the console itself. So let's say I want to make a prediction model where I want to say, is my package arriving on time based on the data points that I have? You browse your data points. You say, these are the data points that I want to include. Here's my target. I want to make a prediction on when my package arrives on time. You click that together. It will then look at the different data points, provides you with a preview of how your model will perform, what would be the accuracy based on the data sets that you have available here. And if you're ready to go, it then trains a machine learning model and provides you with the opportunity to now make predictions on that newly trained machine learning model on top of your custom data. Again, just through that interface, and off I go. I have a model that now predicts, oh, okay, this package's on-time delivery is, I don't know, 94.2% here in this example. Again, making it really easy for anyone out there to use machine learning capabilities without the need to have any expertise in it. Now, the other thing, though, is what if I actually do want to specifically train my machine learning model? I'm a data scientist, an ML ops engineer, and I want to have control over these API endpoints that make the predictions through SageMaker. Now, SageMaker is using SageMaker instances, which are underlying EC2 instances, to create these API endpoints. And you might need to scale that in and out, and of course, that can all be automated, but a lot of our customers have said, hey, I just want that to be serverless, and that's why we launched Amazon SageMaker Serverless Inference. So if you need to have your machine learning model and you want to make predictions against it and you don't want to worry about how that scales, use serverless inference and we automatically scale it out for you. Especially useful if you have scenarios where you only make predictions once in a while. Now, sometimes, though, you want to have a certain baseline and set it yourself because you want to have control specifically over what are the instances that actually make those predictions, but you don't want to oversize them. And that's why we have Amazon SageMaker Inference Recommender. So this recommender, similar to the computer optimizer, will look into what are the predictions that you're making and then gives you a recommendation of should you maybe downsize or upsize some of your instance here that make these predictions. Again, effectively potentially reducing waste or just running more optimally. In addition to that, it's also our mission to put machine learning into the hands of anyone out there. And we figured it would be great if people can just start experimenting with machine learning models without the need to even have an AWS account. And that's why we launched Amazon SageMaker Studio Lab, which you find on the URL that you see down here, studiolab.sagemaker.aws. You sign up for an account there, and off you go. You can actually get access to SageMaker Studio Lab, start experimenting with your machine learning models, run and train them completely for free in Studio Lab, even without an AWS account. And we continue to invest also in these fully managed AI services. I talked about Amazon Personalize a little bit earlier. Amazon Personalize gives you access to a personalization and recommendation engine, the same one that Amazon.com is using. And we keep adding capabilities to it. So now, for example, you have intelligent user segmentation, where the model will effectively detect what are some of these segments within my user base to run campaigns a little bit more effectively to marketing channels. So if you talk about, let's say, movies, for example, it might identify here are your fans that like to watch action movies and automatically segments that for you, so you can now start running your campaigns. In addition to that, we also look into, can we give you access to more industry-specific use cases here? So Personalized, we now have 2 new use case optimized for recommenders for retail and media entertainment. So if you run a retail, let's say an online commerce, for example, now you have applications like recommended for you, or customers who viewed this also bought that or frequently bought together. With a click of a button, I have access to these capabilities. If maybe I run a streaming service of music or video, any kind of media entertainment, now I have maybe my top picks, my top movies, or because you listen to this or watch this, you have these capabilities. Again, this is now available for you with a click of a button, fully managed, no need to write any piece of code or understanding how it works, specifically designed for these kind of use cases. We also continue to invest into other services here, so with Amazon Forecast, which provides you with the same forecasting engine and capabilities that Amazon.com has. We also added some auto predictor capabilities here and also explainability. So if you want to know why we forecast something a certain way, you now have a way to actually explain that, removing effectively that black box effect that you might have otherwise. In a similar gist also, Amazon TextRact, which is an AI service that uses AI to extract intelligently information out of documents. A lot of our customers have said, hey, I need to do KYC. Can you make it a little bit easier for me to do that on identity documents like passports or ID cards? So we added that support. So if you have that kind of scenario where you need to validate an ID or passport, TextRact now has a full support for these kind of identity documents. Also, if you need to build any kind of conversational interfaces, both spoken or written, Amazon Lex can do that in a variety of languages to build this natural conversational interfaces, click it together through the console without the need to kind of write any code. We also added an additional visual designer to it, the automated chatbot designer. So if you build some kind of chatbot functionality or capabilities, this new designer will potentially help you to visually collect that together and build it. Now, with that in mind, though, this is kind of all I wanted to cover today in terms of some of these announcements, but this is really just the subsets of some of these new services and functionalities that are available to you. We have over 200 different services that are available to you, from compute to storage to blockchain to AI, machine learning, database, and analytics. Really, you want to look into how can AWS help you to build your platform reliably, agile, and scalable at a global scale. And all these services and continuous features and announcements that we keep adding to the platform will help you to do that. Now, I hope you learned a lot today about how you can get started building on top of AWS. But if you want to learn a little bit more, it doesn't stop here. We also have the AWS Digital Training, which is an online platform where you can take digital training at your own pace, flexibly, at your own convenience. Here you find it at aws.amazon.com/training. And there are lots of different courses available for you here, for example, a cloud practitioner course, or maybe a specific security learning plan if you want to dive in a little bit deeper there. So if you want to learn more beyond what we looked at today, look at the digital training that we make available for you. Lastly, it's always important for us to also get feedback. So any kind of feedback that you have, things that we can improve, things you want to hear more about, not only can you give that feedback through the platform that you're watching this through, but here are all the different channels also on how you can contact us, provide your feedback or leave any notes of what you want to hear a little bit more about. Now with that, I want to thank you very much for attending this live closing keynote. If you have any kind of questions, please submit them to the platform. Like I said, the platform will remain online. And again, thank you so much for attending. I hope you learned a lot and let us know how it was. With that, see you next time and stay safe.